Many people in the property investing world aspire to become property developers. They might currently have started off with single buy-to-let property, or maybe rent-to-rent, or maybe even just sourcing property, and now they want to transition into the big league where the big money is of property developing. However, that transition, that can be a scary step. The great news is, in this video, I break down for you step by step how you can become a property developer. Hey, if you're watching my videos for the first time, my name is Saj Hussain, and on this channel I share with you my 15 plus years of property investing experience to ultimately help you get further faster in your own property investing business. So first of all, we need to clarify what we mean by property developing. Property developing is really the creation of new homes that don't exist right now. That might be brand new houses out of the ground, it could be a block of apartments, or maybe even a commercial building that you repurpose. Am I really going to have to do the whole video wearing this stuff? We're inside, it feels a bit daft. There, that's so much better, he says as he adjusts his non-existent hair. The strategy of property developing, why is it so popular? Well, ultimately it's because there's a big payday at the end of it. You get a huge reward for the efforts that you're going to put into it. So many people like the idea of putting the work in and getting a big payday at the end of it. That's if you're selling, so you've got a big liquidity event. Now, it may be that you're keeping the property, especially in this market, when you're trying to find discounted property, say 25% below market value property that you want to keep or add to your portfolio. It's very difficult to find. Whereas if you're developing, you'll probably have that in your profit margin. So effectively, you're achieving the same end result by having about 25% equity in your deal, remortgaging and getting the rest of the cash out. So when is the best time to start with this strategy? Well, for many people, they tend to progress onto it gradually, and that was my story as well. When I started in property nearly 16 years ago now, at that time I started sourcing property deals first of all. It was a great market to be sourcing deals and selling them on. Then gradually transitioned into smaller single buy-to-lets I partner with other people with, and then some smaller HMOs, some larger HMOs, flipping property, some commercial property before I eventually got onto development. And I was very cautious and I was much slower in that approach. I probably could have done it sooner, but really the way I work, I tend to work with other people's money. So my approach tends to be much more cautious. So I'm not really one of these people that takes a lot of risks to get those big returns. I won't take those gambles because I've got investor money that I'm working with. So the challenge that I had, I needed to find a deal that would work well as a property development because I was eager to get into property developing, but actually hadn't done it before. I didn't have the experience. And there also needed to be enough margin in it to be viable for me and also for my investors as well. With the first development deal I did, on the face of it, the numbers really weren't that great, but we were able to negotiate it down to a much more attractive deal for us, restructure how it was going to work so it's actually going to be very profitable. Because it was going to have such a fat profit margin in it, what it meant was that I could actually now de-risk it further by working with somebody as a partner and sharing the profit with them as well. So what that meant was not only would I actually get the experience of getting into property developing, I'd have a partner that's experienced at doing these type of projects, and I'd be using other people's money to be able to deliver the project and produce a profit for all those involved. After completing that process, what I did realize was that actually if you've got the right people on your team, you don't actually have to wait to build up the experience because it's the team's experience that you can benefit from to produce the results quicker. So yes, it's absolutely possible to start with this strategy as opposed to transitioning into it after doing many of the other strategies. So let's now talk about how it works. So the first thing that we need to do is actually find a site that we can develop and build new homes on it. This might be a piece of land, or it may even be a site that's already got a building on it that needs to be repurposed and where the new homes are going to go. Now, it may be that the site already has planning permission to be able to create those new homes, or it may be that you need to take it through the process of getting the relevant planning approvals so that you can build what you want there. Now, if you have a site that already has planning approval, the great part of that is that you can pretty much break ground and get started fairly quickly, so the delays are minimal. It may be that if there's full planning permission already in place, there might be some conditions that need to be discharged, some pre-commencement ones before you can actually start building, but generally it's a much quicker process. The challenge, however, is that somebody's already designed this particular site and you are basically implementing whatever they've designed. You're not really tweaking and maybe making it more efficient or maybe even more profitable. The other thing to bear in mind is because the property is being openly marketed, you're probably not going to get the best deal in terms of purchase price. The person who's taken it through planning has probably already taken a chunk of profit from that, and really by purchasing it from them, you're paying them out, so they're making their profit and you'll make your profit on building it out. On the other hand, if the site doesn't have planning already, that means that you've got the flexibility of being able to create what you think were the best solution for that particular site. However, you are then carrying the risk and also the costs in terms of taking it through the planning process, because there's no guarantee or certainty of outcome. Now with planning, there's not really a scientific solution that you follow steps A, B and C and you get result D. It doesn't necessarily work that way. On the other hand, if the site doesn't currently have any planning approval, it means you have the advantage of being able to create and design the scheme that you think will be best suited to that particular site. The challenge, however, is that you will be carrying the risk in terms of time and money to be able to take it through the planning process to be able to get the result that you want. And there is no guarantee, there is no certainty of outcome that you will actually achieve or get what it is that you want. That does, however, also mean that you'll probably be paying significantly less for the site than you would if it already had planning approval in place. In our business, we will consider both sites that have got planning permission and also those that haven't, although our preference is to work with those that haven't got planning permission so we can create what we want as an outcome from that particular site. And when we're looking for these type of sites, many of the time, if they're on market, they'll be advertised through Rightmove as the main portal. There's also specialist agents that really broker these kind of deals. Often you'll find that they'll also be advertising on Rightmove. And there's also sources that we work with that find sites like this and bring them to us. When we're looking for sites that are off market, that are not really being openly advertised anywhere, then we're looking for those using tools like Google Earth, for example, which give you an overview of what's going on. If you haven't used Google Earth, you have not lived. You are missing out big time. A fantastic tool. You can see certain bits of land and buildings that you may never have noticed before because they're obscure from street view when you're walking or driving past such a property. Then there's other more specialist mapping tools that you can use that will make your life easier when it comes to sourcing sites like this. And the one that we tend to use is called Nimbus Maps. This is a paid for software tool that you use. If it's something you'd like to use, reach out to us as we can get a preferential deal for you with that software. So in essence, our preference is to use specialist mapping tools to find sites that are not on the market right now that don't have planning permission, so that we can really create the scheme that we want and we're not overpaying for the site. So once we've identified the site, how on earth is it that we contact the owner? Well, that's really simple because the government have got a national database that lists all the owners of all the properties in the country called the Land Registry. And essentially you can purchase the data or ownership details from the Land Registry for £3. We would then write a letter to the owner, because now we have their name and their home address, asking them to contact us as we're interested in that particular site. Here's the thing, many people won't respond to that letter. A few will, and they'll be curious at this stage as opposed to being ready to sell you the property. So what this does do is initiate and start that conversation. The next step is to establish what is it that it may be possible to build on that particular site. Now this really requires a little bit of homework and research on your part, depending on whether you're working nationally or locally. If you're working locally, this will become easier over time as you'll build up your knowledge and understanding of what your local authority will support, what is it that they want to see, and what is it that they want to see less of. If you want to learn more about how this particular process works, and if enough people ask, I'll do a separate video on it, just pop it in the comment section below. We tend to also work alongside planning consultants and architects to try and work out what we think might be possible to get on that site. Once we have established what is it that we think we can build, we need to work out what that will be worth, i.e. what will be the gross development value of that particular site. From there, we can now start working out what is it that we can pay for the site to make this project work for us, and establish what's called the residual value. Let me explain how this would work. Let's say I've identified a small site where I think I can build a terrace of 5 houses. And let's say those houses are maybe £200,000 each. So £200,000 houses, and we have 5 of those. That gives us a GDV of £1 million. That's our gross development value. Then we've got to think about what's it actually going to cost to build these out. So let's say, and I'm making some arbitrary numbers here to keep things simple, let's say it was £80,000 to build each one of these, and we've got 5 of those, so that's 400,000 is our build cost. Then we're also going to have some costs in terms of maybe clearing the site, going through planning permissions, some consultants, specialist reports, architects' fees. There's a number of other costs that we're going to incur to be able to get to be able to complete this project. And let's say for simplicity that was £100,000 of other costs. Now, right now, we need about £500,000 here to be able to build out. Plus, we've got to be able to pay for the land as well. So we need that money from somewhere, and there's going to be a cost for that money, whether that's a profit share or whether that's your interest that you're paying. Let's say in this case, that's £100,000 that we are paying for financing costs. Now, one of the main reasons that we're actually doing this exercise because we want to make a profit, so we need to build that into this. So the profit typically over the GDV, we want about 25%. That's the figures we should be aiming for. So in this particular example, we want £250,000 of profit in the deal. Now, when we take all these costs off, that £1 million, we take the 400,000 to build, the 100,000 of other costs, 100,000 of financing, and 250,000, that means we're left with 150,000 in this example that we can actually pay for the land, what's known as the residual value. Now, it may be on our initial research that we found that the site might only be 40 or 50,000 pounds at most. It's what it's currently worth. Because we're able to pay 150,000 pounds for that site, because we can get the numbers to work for us, now we'll have the owner's attention. Now that we've established the figures, the next step is to negotiate with the owner and to strike a deal. Because here we worked out we can pay £150,000, it doesn't mean we're going to pay £150,000 tomorrow, purchase the property and job done. Now, essentially what we want to be able to do is purchase the property at some point in the future. So that might be 6 months, 12 months or 18 months from now. The reason being because you still need to go through planning to be able to get the relevant approval before you purchase. Otherwise, if you purchase the property right now and you don't get planning, not only have you incurred the costs and expenses of being able to go through planning and getting a refusal at the end or not getting the result that you want, but also now you've been sitting on this land as well that you don't necessarily want. So what we want to be able to do is have a right to be able to purchase that land, say within 18 months, but not have the obligation. So that means if it doesn't work out for us, we can actually walk away from that deal. Now you might be thinking right now, why on earth would the owner do that? Well, earlier we were talking about the site might be worth maybe about 40 or 50,000 pounds right now. And if you're paying maybe up to 150,000 pounds for this site, you are potentially paying 3 times what the site is worth in this particular example. So this is why the seller will be willing to work with you. Now, not in every single situation are you going to get that kind of a response, but generally speaking, because you're building in so much more for the owner of the land, in terms of the amount of money they can walk away with from that site, they're more open to working with you to get the result that we are ultimately looking for here. The document that we use to be able to secure this type of deal with the owner is called an option contract. So that gives us the right but not the obligation to purchase that property. Once the agreement is signed, we can set about getting things in motion to be able to get the planning approval in place. So now we're going to be carrying the risk, the cost, the time and the pain to be able to get the planning approval that we're actually looking for this particular site. There might be a number of reports we need to do, for example, in terms of the site, land contamination, ecology, various other things to ensure the site is suitable before we can even get to a planning application stage. And the architects and the planning consultants are really part of your power team there that can help you get through that process, as well as the specialist consultants that you might need. The next outcome that we're looking for is the planning application being approved. Once that happens, we celebrate first of all, because you've gone through an enormous amount of pain and headache and frustration probably to get to that point, so you certainly need to enjoy the moment. Once planning approval is in place, the value of the land generally will jump quite significantly compared to what it was as we described earlier on. This is where your option contract is really powerful because it also prevents the owner of the property selling to anybody else because you have the exclusive right to be able to purchase that land. For some people, their business model is only to get to this point and now actually sell that contract on and be able to walk away with maybe a significant profit. So they never actually build anything. Whereas a property developer, you're going to be building out. So you now need to find contractors to build the site out for you. This can be done in 2 ways. You can either project manage the site, so you're managing all the trades that are coming on and off that site. For example, you clear the site first of all, then you've got groundworks, then you've got being able to start building the basic structure, your carpenters. So you've got various different tradespeople that are going to be working on that site that you need to manage. Now, if this is your first time, I'd certainly discourage you from going down that route. Ideally, what you want to do is find a contractor that will take on that whole job, and maybe even as a design and build contract. What that means is they are responsible from delivering the project for you and handing you the keys on completion. So you don't need to be involved on a day-to-day basis. This would be my preference. Now, there needs to be a sufficient profit margin to be able to do that because they're going to be charging you more than what you'd be able to do if you're going to manage a trade individually, but they're effectively taking the headache and the risk away for you. So they're absorbing some of that risk. That means they'll want a higher profit margin for carrying that risk as well. Now, to protect your side, ideally you want what's called an employer's agent. What that means, they look after your interest, a quantity surveyor, to make sure that the building contractor is actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, rather than you just waiting, sitting back in 12 months' time, hoping they're going to turn up with the keys. You turn up 12 months later and find actually no one started and all you've got is a hole in the ground. The one thing we haven't yet talked about is how do you finance a deal like this, because you're going to need a significant amount of cash to be able to do this deal. The great news is you don't actually need a lot of money to be able to do a deal like this. Yes, you need a small amount of cash, but actually you can use specialist funders that will help you fund a deal in stages to be able to do that. The other advantage of that is that they normally have their quantity surveyors also on the case, making sure that the project is being built and delivered in the stages as expected, and they'll release money in stages as the project moves forward. Now, if you want to learn more about how that funding works, I'll link up a video up here for you to watch after this one. Now, what I've shared with you is clearly just an overview of how this particular strategy works. But the real point that I wanted to get across is this is not really about you having lots of experience before you can get into property developing. Property developing is about having the right people around you, finding those great deals, appraising them, and getting the result that way. If you'd like for us to help and support you in that, then make sure you reach out to us on our website, sajhussain.com/learn. Contact us and we'll do our best to help and support you get the results that you're looking for. If you've enjoyed this content, then make sure you click on my face over here to subscribe to the channel. Now, this particular strategy is not really a bed of roses. It can come with its own challenges, and I had my fair share of those. In fact, if you want to see an example where a contractor went bust partway through a new build project of mine, then click on this video over here.